happy to be here with Tulku Sang-ngag Rinpoche, who's in the nunnery in Nepal. And so we're very fortunate to be able to listen to his words of advice, and we're all very pleased to be here with you, Rinpoche. Lasso Rinpoche.
Oh, Lasso. Lasso, tenita train in a young Kokap to the Tinje. Tenita Tangazo ta Shanop down, turning around to young. Tang around to Chiloma and data, Tena Yingiche. Any Samagata. Second Samalanya, Tambuma, Trash Delays, that's some Shubies.
And so we're taking this, opportunity to greet all of my students from the East and West and everyone who's come here to listen. And so I'd first like to greet you and say Tashi Dele to everyone who's joined us.
So, Tenita Tatangaranz, any Zambulang Nidante, any Betangaranz Midavadouch, that Talugo the Chadi ores, the Niji Yenzang, the Nitanga to pay any that Zambulang Casacala, not Daniel Samala Tini, Solatini. Dravatan, the nurse Chematobata, Mang Chevata, Chimdug, the Karsagorota, the main Karsa. Chamla de Gota, Chamla de. Oh, that is that. Tapping as a counter cowdog walletini. De Gogoyaba Sonsa, Lion, Tene, Della de Dios, Payola de Dio, Inata, Lisate. Yabore song, Dukan lad song, 3 songs. Any Tenayin, Tenetanga to pay the touches of Samara Tenawachita, Zambul and Kanya 3 told the Yores.
And so all of us everywhere in the world, are in a quite different situation than our normal situation this year. So no matter where we're staying, all of us are quite unable to really connect with each other like we normally do. All of us are forced to kind of stay indoors in some sort of quarantine situation. And I as well am staying in a type of quarantine here in Nepal. But the place that I got stuck in Nepal was quite a good place because I'm, stuck here in the retreat center. And so I know that, everyone is equally meeting with such difficulties this year.
Oh, yeah, Tennis on the Pena, Tening around Nami Yanayandra, Tenitena, that's Sama, Kukate or Pecha Yana, that trained out Chayana, any Narango Pomo, Omati, Tenico, Teridiores, any Train and Penanga Pom, Omati, Morangatini, Baljeres.
That's all.
Yanayang Tenita, oh, Karase, any Teni, nga. Told to we all marry and wrote to we all marwa. And it did not yin penata, Tedra with it up and it is a Tetang around Tedra with Yabayina. Then it Tedra with tacos of Midsummer Tedra with it in a Mambotilla Layores.
And so, like, just one example is, all of us being separated from each other. Today is Chegi Semo birthday race. So today's my daughter's birthday, but I'm not able to meet her. And so I'm sure that there are many others who are in similar situations.
Oh, yeah. Tini, Tenang Yinge, any Tatangaran Ta, Choching Tini, Zambulang Tony Lega Shornge meet up at Jessere, Sayamambo Lega Lega Shoulder Yore. Tenetena Yentene Mango Jege, and it up at any that Carissa Gorgo, that so then La Droya down. And it didn't touch any Cho unit up a Kale Mango, which check the Ores.
And so just in one side, then many people have lost their jobs. Many millions of people have lost their work, and many people have lost their, ability to gain their sustenance. And so people are experiencing difficulties in all sorts of different ways.
다 되게 이니 말한지 좀센데 가르레스나 다 다르게 무행게더니 가르세다 나사 서바틱 다 되게 다 말한지 강일 때레데 요래 근데 다 밀라지 바다 자컵 잠벌랭게 자컵 파르체와라 쳄사리 다 참말에 쳄어봐 근데 참말에 쳄사레스 근데 때나 이게 배다 미스 아니 다치 사야만 볼라들은 에너지들이 동아 아니 때나 이게 다치 아니 다 때나 이게 때네 배다 트럼페만 보더니 그래서 나야당 셔야다더니 다치서 다가 뉴욕산에 말했더니 담발에 요도 도면 상이 말을 답해 메시브 다다던 잠벌랭데 강에랑 아니 녀가당 동하르게 나왔더니 템도 요레스.
And so, the reason for this is because of this new disease that has spread basically all over. No, we should say even all over to every country in the world, and has spread to many, is affecting many millions of people. Many millions of people. Many people are, directly getting ill with the sickness. Many people have died from this sickness. And so it seems almost impossible, how serious this has become and how much difficulty this has brought. And we are all kind of, in the midst of that, that experience of difficulty as a result of this illness.
Olaso, tene tetawe so na tachi nga so namjendo tene mito so na yatsme de shia mambo hongro bro. Yina yang tape na nepa ji yona nepa range tene ta namge tam thoba. Shisona tene nga so namjo na ko tachi nepa de shisona nami chamge ene ta ma ene ro che ne tene tachi nga ran so ma semso che ya tene chamre che ya tene tenage ke roga che ora ta deyang che kuyo mares ta tene so be ta misege ta chi nga ran so nam yundan tsani mira ba chi ta tene se tene 동하는 tene chemo che ta chayores.
And so, it's just normally the case that people are going to get ill and people are going to die. But, what's happening now is that even if someone is sick from this disease, then people, even their families don't dare to directly take care of them. They can't go see them. And if they die, then normally, we'll have a gathering of the family where they console each other and they get together and they have a funeral and so forth. And we can't also do that. And so right now, this is a time in our lives that's very different than, than any other situation that we faced before.
Voilà, so ta tene che ki tene cho chi ni ta ta de pen zambuleng ra ying. Ene ta che judo chimbo che tab ro yo re. Tene song za nga to ta nam jun che longba chungkyong che ge na la nga so longba che ki ta su su gu sam lo. Su su ge ya ye ta ya su su ge de do. Ta tene che la mang che ge stang de yo ro. Ene ta ritene do chi kanga je treonde pena tene ene ngato tertene roa mege rei tamche ene sama deva donghe da donga mdo ke chi kwa chado yore ta tig nauni chi ene ngato chi tene pension chi ki chela pena ta ngato tenra ogen donga dang kange chembo chaondo ya longba chi la lemni tene zambul yons zobala tene kangar de tredoya ene te na ying ta pen ene zambule chamata tukya tebongyak tendege yang de yang ni so yenda chagyores.
And so the whole world has undergone a great change then. Normally if you're living in your own small region, your own small country, then you usually just think about the concerns of your own country, the interests and development of your own country, and so forth. And but everyone is then experiencing this difficulty, and it's the same for everyone. No matter who you are, all humans wish for happiness and don't wish to experience suffering. And so now, if you see the situation in one country, then you realize that everyone is experiencing the same disturbing circumstances. Everyone is undergoing those same conditions and some same situations. And so everyone has been affected and disturbed in the same way. Let's.
Honest. The next song, the young Zamboling, Jiyong Dole, Chegoya. The name of the main roy in by Chigua, Naso de do Chigway Tony. The young Chigitol and Zamboling, the tongue of some of my day. That been a show Cambodia left Jenny. That Tadanga Zamboling, Chig, any young Zobi Chig. For Hang Chesa Chig, that Tetam Killer Bone Chia, the Tola. Then Charlie Mambo Nango or Miseta, young the Soina, Tachi, Samata, Yambrigi Tony, then Zamboling, touching also. Angela Bone Chia down. Oh, that Angela say a tablam say. The Negatola, any data will get any Yamli Chia. The name me say getting out of the Sotam Giliata, Karasegorgo, any. That the young, data Avogotachi, Showman body Jaguar, that is Suganana. Any young Karasa young Mindava Yenayandra, our Kari Yenayandra, Dona Tinitang around to Jacob Lamlo Kari Yenayandra, that Tindiche Tony, that Timungu Tolaya, to some key, my year Rangi Chago or Tindis on the death Abigana, can it me say that Charlie Shokchabonang at Samala, and a Takwan to the chess Shoguaji. And
so in the whole world, everyone is having to learn how to deal with the situation and realize that this is affecting everyone equally, that everyone is also wishing for happiness and no one wants to suffer, and there's a lot of necessity for thinking of the common good now and thinking outside of one's own selfish interest or one's own personal small situation. And so many people are then focusing their efforts into some kind of, communal or cooperative work and cooperative efforts in order to work with ways of dealing with the situation and ways of coming up with methods for, cures and treatments for this illness and this situation. And so it's really become a necessity where we have no real choice but to work together at this point. And so no matter what country people are from, no matter what their general views are, they have no choice but to turn their attention into a greater world picture and to work communally and work together on these things. And there are so many people now who are putting a lot of effort and working very hard into working for alleviating any kind of difficulties associated with this situation. And so I want to say from my own side, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone who's putting in those efforts.
Hola, mi ser que tiene la chica ta parece goro ta niendo pa yinayandra men pa yinayandra men ye pa yinayandra ene tinde que ta chinga la so bunzin yong le je pa bunzin so ina dra mango je que ta mi ser que tigi na la pe photo ene so gerk ta chi tinde que kangela Teni Yankala Matuba, Teni Donle Nane, Teni Chick, Pay Shok Chimbotrich, Nangadoa, Tamchi, Teningara, Misaki, and Jesus around to his shoes.
And then also, when it comes in terms of some, police, doctors, medical researchers, anyone, a lot of people who are kind of managing certain bureaucracies or governments or businesses and so forth, people who are, particularly putting aside their own sense of how difficult this might be and working very difficult. So I want to say also that I really rejoice in all of their work and all their efforts, and thank you to them.
So that the Tony Penn gets it up and member in and that in the younger pen any that Pelicina, the Mangoji, Coranzoya, and Nasa, Hoje. That the knowledge get the chart of the war. Then it get the sort of it up and to ten again, Kariski, Jonoya, that is Sugachi, Mangochi, Gitachi, Angela Donan, and the Nango. So Tanga to Penitang, that just is Chanky Sumba. The so Tamji, Hopdong and Carriers and a dayen nyamba dayen jeba dali yenji singe yore tene ji sonda ta pena ju ngara zo tene dayen nyambe ge thone tene ta sem ngara zo pena ta shalon no bya kawa na ngara zo samata mi chikwe yimbe thone samlo tanya tene tinani mi serge tene ta dali yenji ge thone chi ngara zo ta ene longap chela phan thoya susu ge longala phan thoya tene pena thama ta chi ngarang zoge mi gerge tawadrawo tene ngachupe any ja chungchong rawo te mar chi ja chedrawo che roje pena ta soso rang che pena any ta ting sa any chlo do rowa yina ya ta khari kong gogu yore tene pede keser te na yenge tene ta chode je de minroya ta pen nangka chin de go re guz ta te so drona ya tenda wo che ate chegni tene ngarang to la nasa mayo ya ngarang to la ngo chago yore chegni yena no ba ma che ya che de re de go yore tene so ta te ya pen na tene rangda yenda ani nga to changmi gi te ya da ngana to pe ani ta chi kun ke le te ba ina ya da te ta pen ya go 나와 이나 따뜻소담 제기가 좀 찔라 해베게 들다 들이지가 저지 에네 다연냐바다 다연 지역에 삼모 어제 개첨보제래도 상도스.
And continuing with that, then, when we're thinking about, medical workers, doctors, and so forth, police, many of them have actually contracted the illness in the midst of their work, and so they're having to directly face this difficulty and directly encounter and work through those difficulties in order to do their jobs. And so when we look into the trainings of the bodhisattvas, we see these teachings, which are the equalizing self and other, exchanging self and other, and cherishing others more than oneself. And so we can think about this exchanging and equalizing self and other, and if we can really start to think in that way, then this is something that we really need in order to start thinking, of the general good and turn that self-interest or that interest only in one's, very smaller perspective of the world where one just thinks of one's own concerns and really expand that out to others. And so when we think about that, for example, we can think about, wearing masks and so forth when we go out and taking care of our health. And so from one side, this illness can be spread by the air. And so we should be thinking, that when we wear a mask, we're doing that to protect ourselves, but also and equally, we're doing that in order that we don't, potentially spread that disease to others. And so if we can turn that attention and make our motivation one to be, thinking of the concerns of ourselves, but also of others, and really turn that attention to the general good and turn our attention to those practices of equalizing and exchanging self and other, then that's really important and really good for us. Listen.
Oh, yeah, so tene te rabote tata tene tadong ngaran so muntu ne goguyore tene ke tong changme ge tene tonan noronas. Oh, ta te da chi ji goni yen chi ji goni. Oh, tene ta ngaran so go pena ene ja khab go ta pena chi sre nga so jarji ge thoni. Ta te chama ta chi kwa thu do. Tene ge thoni changme ge mise ge tene tonan noronas.
And we need to continue doing that. We need to continue paying attention and putting that into practice. And so, when we think of that from the perspective of cherishing ourselves, it's the same. If we think about it in terms of cherishing others, it's equally important. And we think about it in terms of cherishing our countries, it's the same. It all comes down to the same point and the same kind of advice and the same kind of protection and safety that we need to do. And so we really need to take a really specific and pay particular attention to this and be careful about this. And as a Buddhist, then this is also can be considered as a practice of the bodhisattva. Bodhicitta.
Hola, so tati toni misergi tata ngaranzo gope ta mimambola tani kange chede yore tat pe misebata eni nyanga yore tani dohane yore tat te tamchi chamala eni ta ngaranzo yandane jejimendo ngaran so ya ta pe ta barta ene nonam re jab so are tab dev jwa samya tab jeta ene dongar gu jota traver chorche devata dembar chona che maro nyam chena nga so ti jendo ta chi nga so seme ye singing ta pe na cha ani nga so lob yung ji che de jorwa ta te so dam je nga so chi ani rangjing gi ta ma je rangje da wo chi ta te le la ku che ya me jo da wo chi de chi cha do nga ran so te ga ran che ga yo de chami gi te na yin ani na wo na
And then particularly, so many people are experiencing these difficulties and experiencing, unimaginable, almost impossible levels of suffering. And there's not much else we can do other than to make some aspirations and prayers and pray for them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, pray for them to have happiness and the causes of happiness, and all of these, aspects of the four immeasurable thoughts and all of these different, trainings and meditations that we've learned. And so, other than that, there's not much else we can do. And so we're doing that. I'm doing that. And I also encourage you to do that.
Voilà, so that is the choching around so good any chanchu sending yamnes at the capsule. Then it's tota samba zambo chili, yella pembig samo chili labdego yore. Rana down, then it me yandala. And it tamchele yata, not so good any ta pantoyagic. The reaching in the around so good choching it any young that don't lam chirji senator, around so good data chapchig. Any maran to Yamnan Tinity, that in Sangology, catching what I would chat the do, some do. Any penada Shavalaga, Tinis Soyore. That ching out of Carte Tapchiona, any Debjeni, the name around so Caressa tap any that Chiago was. The Carte Tapchi Mena, any that telling around so pedages any that don't actually the Pantogmarva.
And so, when we're thinking of these trainings and practices of bodhicitta, of the bodhisattva, then what we're mainly talking about is having this altruistic intention, this wish to help others. And so that includes yourself, to help, yourself, others, all beings. And so, from one side, you can say that, that these practices that we call, taking suffering as the path or taking suffering on the path are become very important right now. I think that they're very important right now. And as Shantideva said, if there's something we can do to fix a situation, then there's no reason to be upset about it. But also if there's nothing we can do to fix a situation, there's also no reason to sit around to suffer about it or to be unhappy about it.
Tene ya magawa, tene dongar, tene kanger, tene ngoda, tega rangi tola samno te mutu tang deba yena, tene she ngato noba terani, katu guyo mare, tene nang ta sozu ge semge tola, kanger ni, kanger ki tola, kanger lep, dongar ki tola, dongar lep, tene ta ngato chi nang ni ki tone. And
so now we're in the second of those situations, which is one where we can't fix it. It's not something that we can fix ourselves. And so if we just sit around and continue to be unhappy about it, to experience suffering about it, to cause problems for ourselves about it, and just continue thinking in that way, then we're not going to be able to, overcome any of these harms or difficulties. And we're just going to be stacking difficulty on top of difficulty in our minds and suffering on top of suffering in our minds. And then we not only have the outer level of difficulty and suffering from the sickness, we also combine that with our own inner suffering. Listen.
Nang sambatela, tanga chik ta kangel done chia senaya mendo, ta lamchir chia senaya mendo, ta ngatu sambitone, ta chik ngatu ya any some of the Yanda Jig told part in the town top na Tepe Yagodo, the Sonsa, Tapin and Maranto Kangan to Sotam Jepe, Tanga to any Tama. Oh, not to pen a look young cups in the Tenichi or Valatas, Simpian Tampi, don't get a travel short, some jet. That did get sung out in some salads only in a re. That then again, ya, control so at Tavia. And it then again, Tang around to pay chicknato. Any Tenita, Samba get told pay chicknato ya, any chunk of just same to so ya gum. And it then again, so good chew. And a tongue at chulo that so Mr. Getachi. Yamne Yojote Soge, Sosuga control so at Tabia, Misseg Tanga to Nanga Chikina, Tanga to any digatola, that you tinges later chick. Not that you tinge any pa, death our chikitanga to Tate, pa zogu or some genet, take it all on lots of manam jet, some of town. Titola Susugi Yame, Tola, some of the town in a young as to send you, crippled over the match and the draw. And the young days I send you Deva what you are saying,
And so if we sit around, just in the midst of those inner and outer sufferings, then we won't find any comfort or happiness in our minds. And so, what we should do then is kind of try and turn our attention to something else. And we can call that, facing suffering or taking suffering on the path or whatever. And so when we start to think in the basis of practice or on the basis of practice, then it's like we say in the mind training teachings, that we think about praying and supplicating in order to free beings from suffering and the causes of suffering. And then sometimes we can practice the practice of Tonglen, of giving and taking. And we can also, pray to the three jewels and so forth. And in our minds, we can meditate on bodhicitta. And then, even if you're someone from another spiritual tradition, then you pray to your God or whatever. And in Buddhism, then particularly, we accept that this is an aspect of our common karma. And we can think that by going through this experience and this suffering that we are, going through and exhausting our common karma. And we can make prayers and aspirations and think in that way. And if we do that, then that weight that we're carrying in our minds will become lighter and lighter. And our minds, we can actually seek out and find some comfort and peace in our minds. Let's.
That's all a pen toya chair the top and another some day they or in a chico some of the day by lay. I don't yana taste mata, me mango, leka me mango, tenitang around to Kangario, Dohario, Yamna taste Tom Yago, those some beton, Benatata danga to tragic tone. And then it meet the solar yama, kick pen toya chair the penata, manas, doyam, better go to saya. Then it man, Tungrup chair, better go to Tungrup chair, Richie. So the cherry penata tam. It is on the penam, sort of mango to the Getachi, turn right at the penata, man, tombe, that tender want to trajagan and Yama re calling out to the cherry or then it not to take our pen and Arangi Marita, Aranti Yamna thing, cherry or Aran so on our that takes on a chicken gander with Kuyor, the time, so what any making that to Solma, Kuna, but Nangoyore. That the rich the cups of young Kashi to this some game, Mangodo. Oh, that alone the paying as a church in the Kangajon, the church in him. Pay Yago Johnson, that pen and also a Tata pay the Chester, Man and Mambo don't talk better, go to Mambo don't. That is open the Michitan, the task of you metal. And it did our meters of Mango Chiglayanko. That should say Mando can don't have the water. Young Susuga, any simple. Manam Jap, then it came out of lay lavo, call it a chickers and bezel go to mane, then it then I gave in the Provenia balance of what or that reaching out of the drunk it, rich chair do capsule. It didn't mean my wallet, pant hold, penatata, row in a tenant, Tungsor, Tungrup, then the check bezel go to Begarza, Provenia, that 동럽들이 nga 타바나는 때 제거요 nga랑 때는 주고요 가르레스나 다 아니 미스터기 따티나는 양 아니 로 충종이나라 겐고이나라 따티리 망보지 때 코나조라데스 팬토고도 어떤 가서 그냥 때는 지금 뭐지 요래 때는 가서 지금 망보지냐면 다 두스제지는 근데 양 말한 소지 초제는 야 강의를 써놓는 야 찡념라고 지겠지 딱 말한 소지 딱 남주인은 가서 지 삼는 대고난다 레iten라고 지 제약 소지가 요 말와 야 미망보지 때서 가서 야 삼는 대비존라고 딱 가서 야니 가서 지 삼노게 딱 가서 삼는 대야도 말했대 이나야 딱 가서 마데 랑데 지는데 딱 되게 됐었대 ngazu pa ta dungar yin kangar yin zongkang yin sambi samo de mayin wache ta ngarang zo go dide ngazu kokab yin o ta ngarang zo go mitsela jik ngazu teni ta tare ter tapshi ra jore dina la ta ngazu go je kang thup thup jik ta gewa drobya ene nyamle jeya yenphe jeya o ta tusi jegi yin samla te ngazu la yang 삼노 때라야 지 내가 첨보지 제거 여비게 서로와 지당 야 소소랑게 셈바 때라야 지 대화지 얘네 때나 이게 지 은이 메체들라 팽양 토고요래 근데 된지지 기도 다 가서 람첼스네한다 근데 다 니다다 가서 등상 그 뒤도 두갑 된지지라 지다 개 첨보라고 지 레도 삼고도스.
And so, for me, for example, there's not much else I can do to help people. And so, like for me, I'm here and I'm in retreat, but instead of just staying alone in retreat and shutting off the outside world, then I am connecting with other people in order to have these, group accumulations of mani mantras and Benzaguru mantras and the Purba accumulations, Vajakalaya accumulations, and so forth through the internet. And so we have, many groups of people, and we meet with them, and we gather their accumulations and so forth every day. And so, I'm, maybe responsible for the gathering, but primarily it's other people who are actually doing, the practice and turning in the numbers and so forth. And so it's, that's one way that that we can help others, and that's actually helping people because. So for some people, they think, that, okay, maybe they lost some jobs or some opportunities this year, but a lot of people have been able to turn that into something else where they think, well, this year I was also able to accumulate a lot of mani mantras, a lot of Benzaguru mantras. I was able to spend a lot more time practicing. And so a lot more time, making prayers and generating bodhicitta. And so forth. And so in that way, we can, it's quite helpful. And I've taken part in, 5, different 5, accumulations of the Vajrakalaya mantra. And in those groups, there's lots of people, young and old. And it really is helpful for them to have that, to have something to do and for them to put that into practice. And so then they know that Rinpoche is there with them, that I'm there with them, and so forth. And so, it's not exactly a retreat, but at least we can sit around and not think that you're just sitting around and suffering. You're not just stuck in prison because you can't go outside, but you can think of it, and you should think of it, that now you've got an opportunity. Don't think of it as being forced upon you, that now you're forced to be in like a prison or you're forced to be in some difficult or problematic situation, but think of it as a good opportunity. And now I have options. I have this opportunity. And so I can use this opportunity in order to gather virtue, in order to practice, in order to do something beneficial for others and do something meaningful. And when you think about things in that way, then you have this feeling that you are doing something about that situation. You are doing something useful with your time. And that will bring you some happiness to your life. That will bring some benefit to your life. And that's what we can call, taking this situation or taking suffering as the path. And I think that's a really important way of seeing things. I think this opportunity that we have here is very important.
Hola, so tende sonda, ene tanga so misege loma tiso. Ta tata pe de kese ngana so homa tata ka pa do ngaso kachu ma bu xie debre. Tende teso go tola ta ngon xie na ngaran zo pe na ene lo cheki dana ngara to nima ta karse ini samsala nima kyang mrake tiso kokab da raga yo mare tene tene so teyang tene lo chela ta dawa rere ki chutute so ya sakche pesha ge doso mangpo tangche dus chene yong tene cheki tola nima dure dure tene ma samla de tene chega yo was 다 아니 다리 다 되니 가서 다 빼는 아니 다 초지네 되니 다 다른 가랑주 아니 믹서게 되니 고급 들리지는 존체네 체랑주 다 다리 드서때 킥스 아니 담생게 톨라메당 왔제네 아니 체랑주고 냠네데 강 톱톱지 나로나스 베나 땅원도 싸마톱게 돼서 혼도고마 아니 유구제주 예나ян라 대나게 되니 의지게 냠네 제게 예나ян라 tene tena yinga ta pena chisar ngaran zu ene tena ye ta zokchen yena yandra ta tesu chik susu ku pena ta tata nga zu ni se je ora ta nga zu pena zalong yore zokchen yore ta tena ye susu ku tata ta ngche ki chik kachu top chajo ta so yena ta tari chiran zo ta mixer ki ta ti gogap te zong je jene ta nga zu nyamne che ya ku tila pap song sam che jene tene nyamne na ro nas.
And so, in the past, for all of you students, for my students here, I've taught you many things. I've given many teachings. And normally in 1 year, then, there's many of us who don't even get, 10 days in order to come for some kind of retreat. And we'll work for months or, take all of our salary for that we make in a month and spend it all to come or to take that time to just come for a 6 or 7 day retreat or practice. And so now, what we need to do is take all of those teachings that we've received and not waste our time, but actually manage our time and not allow this opportunity to slip by. And for all of you, there's many people who up to now haven't been able to finish accumulating their ngondro. There's many people who have reached into the main bodies of practice. And so we have many different sections of students. Some people who are doing the practices of the subtle energies and channels, some people who are doing the great perfection, the Dzogchen teachings. And so whatever teachings you have received already up to now, then particularly you should take this opportunity right now and think that, now the time has come for me to put these instructions into practice. Listen.
Oh yeah. 참참는 로사네 요마르와 드니 따텔라 잉아란조 빠지 땅산에 요마레 따티니 가란조 그 초진이 니마 딱발라더니 양 알아서 냠네 찍고 제 두고 말해 드니 가서 그때 드셔도 보셔야 드니 참참는 냠네 제 빼나 튼 드니 양 가서 주고 장야당 대서 그 드니 제 주고 돌아 만도야 대서 그 드니 제 가서 냠네 제 니가 패도 첨보 용거래 드니 니마레레 견도 양 다티 주고야 보여지도 그 차세 차도서 세바이나 가서 패도 첨보도가 가서 초진이 애니 야 르중지 차대고 요래 애니 빼는 가란 쪽에 차라고 지지가는 다 르중라고 있는 르지지 가라서 다 애니 야과 마야차 나사 마용야 근데 그 팽을 요래때 이게 소놈지 싸가면도와 다양 차지 책이나 이게 소놈지야사 애니 가란 쪽마 애니 권홍대야 다지 가라서 개비 권홍지지 호암놈지지 도스 제도 값을 다 드리라고 지켜도 되는 빼나 나저 드셔드릴 가시려다 지가서 에서 튼담 되네 되는 가서 에서 차체 얘네 때나게 다 드셔도 에서 고가 잡더니 에서 뎁들이 빼셔도 저로용지야나 로 드네스 제바이나 되는 가라서가 드셔대야 당가서 니만 만로 막어봤지 양 니만 강나 TV 장장 때 등산 TV를 때 되나요 지고 가야 여사 말이 TV 놓았다 누가다 강에도 요라다 망고도 대마도 여사 말이 다 갈때양 대양 알아서 그 찍기는 가서 되니 다 너는 가서 돼지 오러 왔다 뭐로고 나라 빼는 얘네 돼지 오러 왔다 빼 얘네 가서 심지어 담지 동화를 삼는 닝게 공부를 생각 찍을라다니 곰톰나 대하고 닝게기 얘네 곰사기 레드고 오러 와 너는 대야 당가서 람체 제약이 지 대체모제다 레드고 오래 이내야 다 도스케지는 참말로 다 찍마 애니 드셔도다 담진나로나 때네 데라고 그 드셔도서라 때 고피아 잡으로나
And so, from one side, I don't think, there's nowhere for us to go in terms of, just to go off and try and have a good time somewhere. There's no party for us to go to at this point. And so, but also we're not going to be able to spend our entire day practicing Dharma. But I think it's important then that we divide up our day, that we make some, schedule, or we schedule our day, or make some time where we take some time where we have, a practice session, and then we can take some time in order to do some kind of exercise, like so that, our bodies don't become feeble and so forth. And so for those of us who have the physical capacity, who have the strength and the ability to, then we should do prostrations. And prostrations are really helpful. From one side, they are an exercise, and they're also very meritorious. Whereas, ordinary exercises, they'll, keep us from becoming overweight, and they're good for our health, but they don't really gain much merit. Whereas prostrations does both. And so we can do that. We can generate our good motivation. We can generate virtue, make prayers, and so forth. And so, and we can take some time where we do a practice session, and then we do some prostrations, and then we can read some books and study some Dharma materials and so forth. And if we do that, then it's quite a good use of our time, because these days, if we sit around and just try and watch the TV, there's nothing pleasant happening on the television right now. It's all bad news and difficult situations that we're faced with. And so, from one side, when we talk about Ngondro, then we talk about, when you want to meditate on compassion, you have to think about the sufferings of other beings. So, seeing those situations in the news and so forth from one side can be, a cause for recognizing the suffering in order to meditate on compassion. So that can also actually become some kind of, basis of using this as a method of practice. But anyway, it's very important that we manage our time, that we control our time. And so please, I'm requesting of you to manage your time, to control your time, and to, schedule your day and schedule some sessions into your day.
Yeah, tene yang chiranto che tungme nyamne ge tene ra chajo tene de tungme de so yena de tare ta chamla tene de je nyamne tene su cheba yena ta pe eni yagu yores tene che tungme cham te na ge chero ches.
And those of you who are able to, who are already kind of in your practice and who have the capacity to do that, then I also ask you to do some retreat.
Tene ta susu ge nangme yena yanda mi tam je kitang ge pena tela ta tari ngana so pena ta ngi train de te shie ge se orwa ta chi lam cher rawo chi samo ko na rawo chi tene ta mi su yena ya pena ta nga so ma chlo do yena ta ngara so pena ene khashop jya jora ta ka de ro mago ba chi tene roya te pena ta ngara so ro na ta khashop te so chi jya ji do 다 뒤집고를 지나야 그 상황만 못 당해도 가르래서나 다 뒤에는 그 상황 못 상황 당도 다 나는 다 시기 말에 가서 죽고야고 요래 로지요래 제 나는 시기 말에 제발 요 말에 도스지 상황 마땅하지 라소테니 다디 애니 초제니 나랑 게 남밀라야 포그래 나랑게 남면나니 갱고 이나야 되니 따뜻이 망고라야 근데 기세래 아니 코나 자기 아니 쉐도도아 되니 때나게 뺀 롱발라 포 메탐게 되니 이제 뺀나 땅가서 가격이나 아니 뺀는데 남에게 치에도 심지어 담제지 펜도 롱베게 치엔도 연팽게 치에도 인삼나 뒤치고라야 지금 알아서 싸모지 땅바이나 연팽게 싸모 Tene chi ngaranzo ene unige yongwa yongo yorwa tene chi karsa teso tamji pena da lamchir cheya zogo da nga tu samba nga tu ke da zogo tene samba zambo yona da samba zana sata lamyang da samba ngena sata lamyang ne tamche samba tala rali pi ta do samba zana lobar cha sumba na yinge do su che chene tene sama yenpen je samlo ene yendon je samlo Any today's getting the some of the sotes ya any gave it chola cut Juraina, then Maranzo Gachi, Kanger de Soyan Yang Ching also Bopshuk Drawall Jortovia, any Pentor Drawall Jortovia, tenrigi tening aranzo yang koka biore ten samigi tenagi nauronans. Then mitsama la yang lopso tere nauronans.
And so there's also just as general day-to-day kind of advice, when we're talking about even just going outside and wearing masks when we go outside. First of all, if you don't need to go out, we shouldn't be going out in the first place. But if we need to go out, then we should wear masks. And it's not just as simple as wearing a mask. There's actually a lot that we can think about, because some people, they think, oh, I'm young, I'm healthy, whatever. It doesn't matter for me because, I don't need to wear a mask because I'm young and healthy. I won't get it, or if I get it, it won't hurt me. But we really shouldn't be thinking that way, because if we get it, then we can spread it to our families. And in our families, maybe it can spread to the elderly in our families. And the elderly are much more likely to die from it. And it could spread also to not only just our family, to our community, to our country, and so forth. And so we should be thinking in that way. We should be really thinking that we're doing this. We're wearing the mask in order to prevent ourselves from getting sickness, in order from spreading it to other people, in order to not spread it to our families, in order to not spread it to our communities, to all living beings. And so we should think about this as, with our altruistic intention. And this is a way that just wearing a mask becomes a way of taking this negative situation on the path. Because, what I was asked to talk about tonight was just, a way of thinking about our situation right now and how to take this situation as a path of practice. And so just thinking about that, this becomes a path of practice. So as it said, just bringing the right intention. It says that having that good, if you have the good intention, then the places you go and the paths that you traverse will be good. And if you have a bad intention, then the places that you are and the paths that you traverse will be bad. And since everything relies upon that wholesome intention, you should make efforts to develop that altruistic intention, that good intention. And so if we can really take our minds and really transform them or turn them in the direction of virtue, then this difficulty, we can use that difficulty to make us feel empowered, to encourage us, and to transform something which is inherently or which is itself a difficult situation or a suffering situation into a beneficial situation. And so we should be doing that, and I encourage you to do that. That's
Voilà, tene ta ngaran zoge chik tinima loma nala misegi ta tena yoding ge ta kan Rinpoche de tene ta kona bege tene pe ya go nanga do ta khatang chik ma te sola ene drama te so tene tena gi mata karese goro ta nyamso cheyada kurma cheyada ta bidagare to sonana ene tena yeta ene ne kata ta jitsuma da ene kona bega karlob de to pe yabo nang do ta tena yin ene ya arila pha yode bege yenda ngaran se arige ta nga so go chi lobanda lama da ge da te senso ga yo mambo yorwa ta cheran zola ya misegi lenge te chi yore Chenanzo got the skin. That message, Maranzo, Kangari Yoduga Capso, Donghari Yoduga Capso, that the sola, Maranzo Pena choosing that the solo pantogo yore. And that the Sugatola Pena Kaze, that Maranzo Pena Chanchup just same gomes at that's some yet I'm chick Pamba Druguing. And then some yet I'm chick Donghar say a tap jellying. Oh, then some yet I'm jella. And tache ya toa pea dang teni gawa nguya ke teni ngaran zo chi ti chegi sengo orwa se nga chu tamja tere teni songa chena zo changme ge te da wo jine ta chi yen ma rogwa te zo kang tup tup chi mise ge ta ngaran zo tena yin ane ta ta cho mangbo jine chaja so la ta de tena gi ta lama ge shi kemo mangbo nang do wa teni ngaran zo che namba ga tena yin kang tup tup teni nang nangs.
And then particularly in my students, Ken Rinpoche has been doing a lot of good work there at the Buddha Garden, having these group practices of Tara and so forth. And Jetsuma gave some good teachings and advice the other day. And so I would like to also encourage my other American students. There are quite a few of you who have, been kind of empowered or enthroned or given the titles of Lopun and Lama and teacher and so forth. And you have a responsibility with that name. And so, when people are experiencing suffering, when people are experiencing difficulties, those are the times when Dharma needs to be used to help them. Because when we are meditating on bodhicitta, we're making the commitments to help others. We're making the commitment then to work to clarify, to clear up people's suffering, to bring people to joy. And that's our commitment that we make when we meditate on bodhicitta, when we develop bodhicitta. And so we should be doing that in whatever ways we can. And so if you look around on the internet, there are a lot of lamas, a lot of geshes, a lot of different spiritual teachers who are doing a lot of different kind of lessons and programs online. And I also want to encourage my other students there in America to do something like that, to follow suit.
Ini tata ngarang zo ta disu ro ina ta chik so pa ngarang zo te se le la wo ro do ta pe na ngarang zo nyam yo chen pe na ta ke cha ma bo she go mo do zom che go mo do pe na ene ta ma nu tung ro sa ya dang te ne te na yi pe na ane ta drama do te ro che ala ti le la wo do te ka tan do so nga so ma bo che ba ari la ka tan ne pa te na ge che thom na se la bi de te ne chik ta te la yang go du nge go do Penata Nimare Tranga Jau, young Nimare Kotomit of Patang, Reva Chetrich, and a Chenge, any killing a Rema, so you know, Tata Chena, but the Buddha guarding and Nana, Tata Kembo going to Che and Nango Sare. Oh, so that Tinda would Kitang, Lay Lava, up the good Coney, and the touching meteorology pa any Yamland the Soya, Tindra would chick in the chair again. Tablam to the trick that count Dab Devada, Kan Lela, Michidang, Mim Parvada, Tachi, Mikanga to Solache, Nika Guchi, Semla, Tato Gutachi, Narazoga, any Ya, Yang Susu Gava Doya Tola, the Suk Tola, Cheranapage, Tachi, or Loma the Gagan Cambo, the Tamjiki, Tachi, Cheran to Susuge, any Titola count, Tutup, Nanga Dola.
And so these things are quite easy to put together. These group meetings on the internet and so forth. It's not something that has to be very complicated. And so, these group accumulations of mani mantras or group recitations of Tara and so forth is actually quite easy to put together. And I said at the my last time that I was speaking to you all, I would be really good. I would really encourage, and I would really like if some of my American students could put something together like that. But it seems that there needs to be someone who actually takes the reins and actually organizes and takes control or takes responsibility for that, because someone has to put it together, advertise for people. If you're doing group accumulation, someone to calculate and gather the accumulations and so forth. And so I know that has been going on at the Buddha Garden, and so maybe people just kind of considered that as what's going on. But it's actually quite easy, and I think we should do something that could be kind of easy and practical, something that's easy to practice and easy for anyone to do, for something for ordinary people who are experiencing difficulties, something that would be easy for them to engage with and easy to practice. And so for all of my then American students who have these titles, who are teachers, who are lopuns and lamas, kempos, so forth, then I really want to specifically ask you and encourage you to put something together and to do something, in that manner. Thus.
Hola, so tini. Ta ngarang ta misegi ta nga zu ji tumung ge nyamlen ra wo ji jia ba ina ta nyamlen ge tamba som se ta tambu nga zu ji nyamlen je ate any ta zo teres any ta simje res jang ju ji simje ta teang simje sing de zo tene ngara to ku hong re was.
And so if we do some kind of group practice, then something that we need to consider first is these aspects that we call often, the three principles or the three excellences. And so the first of those is the generation of bodhicitta. And when we talk about bodhicitta, what we're talking about is our motivation, right? Listen.
Oh, that's what that. The need is songs. That's all. So rang. Kono singing di. The need happen. So rangi. The need. Kono. So zobju jaya tere. That things are me mango chegi. The need kange yon. Muda yon. The John the kanga melate. The need mi chang chang. Some what you patang do the kapsa. The need rangi donate yang. 강할 때 퇴바지 차로 얻어서 다티니기도 밑에 약고 제거면도 용대 약고 제거면도 리게대 약고 제거면도 아주 강가 강을 용해 도고 용해 강가 껴데 강가 밀파짱짱 쏘바이나 근데 말아 쏘그 셈텔라 애니 가르세 거고 아 다티기 대와 용면도 얘기 당 알아 쏘고 팬토고면도 와
And so when we're talking about this, we're talking about our own personal motivations. And so we need to transform our own motivation because many of us, then we're always pointing out faults outside of ourselves. We're always saying, pointing out faults and saying that person is wrong or that person's causing me trouble, that the government's wrong. These people are no good. The government's wrong. These bosses or these workers or whoever, my boss is doing it wrong. And always pointing out the faults or, placing blame and placing fault outside. And if we continue doing that and we're always thinking about that, then we're just giving ourselves more suffering. We're just making ourselves more unhappy. And so if we do that, we're never going to find happiness and comfort. And it's actually totally not helpful at all. Listen.
Voilà, so tenir son temps, nga zo ge jian de, nga zo jitin ge tenir ji nga zo sonam ma yin ba ge. Tenir le mango ji sa. Tenir ta pe de je nga ran to lo mango ge na la ta pa zam ji ni ji. Ani nga zo ani tenir si cha yor ba. Tenir ji pe rang ke yan pam. Tenir ta tenir ge ji ta chang mi ge to le pe tenir nga zo Any the told up and say coil of Yinayan Re, Nanga Soso Gerg Tonda, and then Soso Gatachi, Gerg Penata, any Tondashi Chona, then it touched you to tola Kare, Chona, Chon, somebody. Tendre Mambo, Gitachi, you know what you're a child, thing out to Chiting around to Guchi. Then Kanger gets Savan Tinrichik tene pacher tene ngatota yongores.
And so we have been for a very long time, as a world community, or as we could say in general, like as a commonality or a common activity, we have been as a group, we could say, gathering and accumulating a great amount of non-virtuous karma. We've been doing a lot of non-virtuous actions, working for our own benefit, for our own profit, and seeking to defeat others and gain our own profit. And that leads to all kinds of destruction of the environment and so forth. And people think that as long as I accomplish my own goals, then whatever happens to the world in general, I don't really care as long as I accomplish my own goals. And so that has been going on to a strong manner and for a great long time. And that's, primarily where we could say the root of all of our common difficulties is coming from. Listen.
Voilà, so tati nani, pero ta ngaran so jutop te kare oresena, ta ngaran so michik, ta ene maya, samno te jeboji jabni, ta ngaran so pena yendo na samno jipat tang. Those checking the things that I'm going to simply dewa the den the Donata Trana Nyambe. That take it all touching around to ma any Yambang Samo. Any touching azuma any to any shadow mayimba. The nepend is any dead na ying up and the Dosha that come on the mass of the chicky join a young thing as a son of the top the ya pedodo. Penang Milapa. Any John the Bjorn party Chedavale, Naran Tigitan, or that day I got Remedoa, Tig Naranga Chedimidoa. Samni, Maratino Matan Yabayina, Yang Daily Dogwachi. Then young Aran Sonam Chote, Ya, Jutin Sonam Chote, Tedawoya, Kaze, Mansombayina, Yaya Pedro Yore, Tigi Jutuna Pen Yores.
And so what can we do about that? What can we do in order to alleviate that? And so even if just one person, starting with one person, if one person transforms that thought, transforms that motivation, and begins to think of the good of others, of the needs of others, and they start to think and have the intention and the aspiration to free beings from suffering, the causes of suffering, and bring them to happiness and the causes of happiness, then really begin to develop that altruistic intention and not fall under the power of the three minds of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And so in that way, they can begin to increase the force of this merit, of this virtue. And instead of, pointing out the faults of others, but to look at oneself and think, oh, well, I shouldn't engage in that type of behavior. And instead of pointing out the faults in others, but to actually recognize that in oneself, then that is, increasing the power of our common merit. And as great as that force of merit becomes, then the more that can influence our common merit and our common good. Listen.
Hola, so tenis sonza, tangaranzo caresa any simpian tamke, penetangaranzo any deva donge, dongar mendoke. And sama tanga so any chiguares.
And so all of us are the same in that we wish for happiness and none of us wish to suffer.
Hola, tenis sonza, tenis rang deva dobanagi, yan deva dogore. Rangla yaku chena, teni rang gagdoa yena, teni ngaranzo ke yena naba cheti, ngaranzo ke te mubare doa. Rangla teni pede chese ene pelen chene, teni yena pa naba cheti, majeva che. Rangla peleni, teni ya rangla pede chese teni, ta tena yenge yena ya pa ngaranga ya pa, ta pemba chi droba yena. Teni yente gagra o ta tusche chinangato teni samnote tusche chinangato teni tangoches.
And so then just like then others wish for happiness in the same way that I wish for happiness. So we should look to ourselves for what we wish and what we don't wish for, and take our own experience as an example to understand how to behave with others. And so just like we don't wish for suffering, then neither does anyone else. So we should use that as an example and not harm others. And just like others will like to be helped, just like we would like to be helped, so do others. And so we should help others. And so I encourage you to do that, to take yourself as an example and work for others in the way that you wish to be treated.
Teni ngaranzo teni matas semjenge dongal samche. Tata mise ngaranzo dongayo ngabe mambo yorwa. Teni dongal samni ninge gongu yore. Ta semjenge tamche deva chona. Che maron samne tene che ngaranzo go ya deva ndobi ki jo. O ta karina. Tene deva ndobi ki jo te so tamche ya ta samokana devi jo drobya. Dongar ki jo pangya. Dona ta ngaranzo go pena ene ta dedo ki jo senge de so ta koso ge magela thok de yore. Tene so ta dos che chene tene range o tena ni che. Samokana.
And then we should consider, the situation and the suffering of others. And now we have a lot of that suffering that we can see easily in order to generate compassion. And so we should think about, the causes of happiness and suffering, and how to, if we're wishing for beings to have happiness and the cause of happiness and suffering and the causes of suffering, then we should think about what those are. And so that comes down to virtue and non-virtue, doesn't it? And so you should think about that. Listen.
Tene pene ta ngaranzo ge chelayang chelangazo phetoya ge samotang Then cheek you saw a judo down to you saw a tinic now. So you're not so Lord Truda. The song I thought that, yeah, chick do the soup totally young as up in a show your topsack, show you in a pair to topsack, caredona, then I also catch him with any catch him with yours.
And then thinking of, the general kind of helping others, if there are some places where, where we actually can do something that we actually can put our efforts into, then it's also important to do those and to consider those things. Yes.
That America, Miss and Zambulan and Major, can you that man what you do? In Santa California, the Oregon, that Suchola, that made a huge barney. That Kangba Ben Mizebata, and Zoya, that's uncommon what Sidoa. That is what I'm Japan and Tanga to any Michiko Mayimba. That is not a Simjian Xing. That bed just a cassette chardware. The district in that in a Kangel Tendati, you remote on Tapori on the door.
And then thinking again within America into all these other situations, all these places in California and Oregon where these uncontrollable fires are blazing, and how many, houses in the thousands that have burned, and not only the suffering and difficulty of the humans, but also of the other animals and living beings there, and how many of those are, how much difficulty and how many problems, and how this is, not just now, but is a recurring problem. Yes.
Well, so that is what Nazo Pena Ranjong come with any. Teaching Adon Zutini, Kangari de Gore. That is all around any teacher to a Chemidoa. Ta did travel in the tap and checking around and tap was some of the rich Cordego. Penata America singing to the pay, tang around to the top chimbo. Any tena yangata, any miseg, any laxer down. Then it is what up at the kisser any church that is what I left in the chigato, chetumera. Tenepe Chagata, Aran Zambul and Mamma Zoya Chedo, Itan Bamna Sopa Tower, Tenichus and Ato Dram in a Zotuda. Then Aran Zoga Tendra Wugata, may say to Agato Chukotra, which is Zod Matopa and Karina. That the Rita would kill out some of the town goes at it, among you also Zog with some of the town. Many children are told a jam song and drama at the song. Then it is so draw kill a co. Chick Tapshi, Mabati in Samare, that the sort of watching out. Chita some in Maramba in a Karina. That did the watching Munigi any Yena Karina Chetudo, that there's so courage in the Zotu Mavina. Natsuchi, that's selling but the so in a ray, the Niching as a Nevaki Palm Juritan, Lord Rigid as Opena, that the sort of watching Mabas, the sort of in a message to a chicken, then a tender watching as which is Zoji and a pay a word was, that not unpolitically child was.
And so this is a situation, with our natural environment. It's not something we can do much about, but this is something that always comes to my mind. It's that America is such a powerful country and has such, skilled people and so many skills, so many, developments in terms of machinery and so forth, just incredible developments that they seem to be able to do about anything. They can even make enough atomic bombs to destroy the entire world. But we don't have some kind of special, powerful machine to put out these fires. I always think about this. So, it seems that it's not something, that's impossible, or maybe it's just something that people haven't, considered, or something, it can't be the case that it's not possible. And so why is it that they can't seem to deal with this? They're right next to the ocean on this, on the coast where these fires are happening. And so I'm always thinking about this, because we have so many incredible scientists and intelligent people, and we're in this powerful country, and we can't seem to figure out how to control these fires or put out these fires. And so that's just, it happens every year, and it's something that always comes back to my mind. Listen.
Yela pen toya. Tene ngaranzo go yen tene reaching na ti geware do ngazo tene changkyo bi semsena tene ngazo so red was.
And so if we, are doing our practice, or even if we're just considering these kind of things and thinking about how we could do something helpful, all of that is virtuous, and all of that is a practice of bodhicitta.
Ini inda tene ngaran to zo tene kunhong te soya tene ta karese gorbo ta ini ta semje tamje ta ngaran zo chi chela pa mekke chen rawa ta semje tamje dewa ta dembar donghar ta charche donghar me pe dewa tamba ta member ba chorche samche chen tene te tamje pe nga chogo tene soso range semjeje soso range kunte sola tatje tang tene nimare re yendo tene to sjeje tene ngara to semba te ya ani yenpeng samno chudonje samno yendonje samno te ya ched droba yena tene ngara zo ani fizo te la ya pajer tene judoji yongsigara wa tingsanta zambole chojine ta dugore te 초진이 되게 돌아야 갑자기 서버 나오지 대신 열로도 다 가르세고 등산다 빼는 애니 가시 찍고 주고 얘나 뽑편이나 다 패도 메노 다 나랑 저거 찍기 돌아지 삼노지 마다라나지 작도 다 빼는 애니 나도 다 다르게 내용 구조로 만트로 구조로 무게조로 미찍 찍고 니 토야 미도아 얘네 나랑 또 롱바 찍고 니 토야 미도아 ene tada ngaran sogu jakap che chi kun ne thoya mendo ata ta tinde ching ngaran sogu pe tene example line dala ta chi de drop thoya chik ta chi ngaran to phemba drop thoya dewa drop thoya nga so ta changshop thoya ge zogo ta ngaran sogu yendong chedore 되게 토라 냠내이나 되게 토라 삼노 땅 도스 제바이나 tene nga so ge semba te te 나서 미치기기기 semba 야도 도는 미치 되네 나서 그 미자 탐바티 빼나 통바지기 나나 되네 참아라 지 나서 예뱅 삼론다고 지 차보이나 되네 나서 애니 통바티 지 참아 되네 나서 힘대 차로도 되네 나서 그 힘대 쓰는 나서 카가 랍데 힘대데 랑그 샘나 마브조나 되네 샘노나 다 밀레 짱짱다 되네 카요데 밀짱짱 yap라한테 딱 까르보 까르짱 임바라고지 chen 되네 상마 찍바 차로도 데르테 아주 힘대데 나네 드롭네 조 되네 나랑 조 랑게 샘데 힘대지 옌게 샘데 힘대용야 잠블레데 힘대용야 근데 돌아 딱 토와도 토이길레까지 마위길레지 예다चे मतलब सोसो रंग की वो रंग लेगा चार दो था रंग शिबदे चया zambo dubya mi zambo dubya samba zambo chaya.
And so our motivation then should be focused outward on everyone in general, wishing everyone to have happiness and the causes of happiness, wishing for everyone to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, wishing for everyone to have the comfort and happiness that's free from suffering, and so forth. And so we should again and again generate this bodhicitta, generate and examine our motivation, and try to develop and increase that altruistic intention. And if that becomes greater and greater in a greater and greater community, then that can transform that greater community. And so and we can see, some kind of change eventually. It's possible that could change. And we even kind of see some changes these days, that people see that just one person can't really change much. And that, just being wealthy isn't going to be that helpful in terms of transforming, all the difficulties that the world's going through right now. Just being one powerful person alone isn't going to be able to do that. Just one country isn't going to be able to do that. So in terms of facing the kind of greater issues that are happening in the world, like this current pandemic illness, famine, war, and so forth, it's something that, can't be done alone, but has to be done by thinking of and working together and thinking of the greater good. And so, so when we are thinking of our intention for attaining enlightenment, that intention is for the good of others. We're trying to think of the good of others. And so if just one person starts to turn that attention into or transform their motivation into an altruistic one that thinks of others, then that can, spread from one person to another person to another person to a point where you have, a whole community, let's say, a small town of 100 people who are all thinking in that way. And then that one community can become very comfortable and peaceful. But if we only talk about happiness and peace in our speech, but our minds are still just pointing out the faults in others, and our minds are blaming others, then that's not going to really get us anywhere. Because peace and happiness is something that you have to accomplish in your own mind. And that's something that you need to transform in your own mind. And so if we want that peace, then we need to develop that in ourselves. And so we need to work on ourselves. We need to bring that in and work on ourselves and transform our own minds. And it's in that way that we need to focus our efforts. That's it.
Voilà, so tenita ngana zoge semje chede kapso tenita njukwa semje segro njukwa semje sede tenita ngana zoge che yang yenla ta sosu ge che yan ben ge jawa tel sege yorwa ta zo tene shangchub di joba yenla kare pen to lugu drop tomna semje drop tomna te ya ta tampu semde ya zang tang go do semde zang tang tene tama chi lunga tamata 카게 측게 연주 이 답에 제스를 지금 안한 쪽에 에네 다 남주리 연주 그 톤이 지금 아주 연라야 간에서 지 펜바도 도도.
And then we talk about, when we're talking about bodhicitta, we can also talk about engaged bodhicitta. And so engaged bodhicitta refers to, basically any activity that can help others. And we talk about that in terms of body, speech, and mind. But the primary, first we need to actually transform our mind. We need to actually develop and transform our mind. And then in terms of, our external kind of expression of that, even just from mere words, from mere, ways of looking at people or ways of expressing, making facial expressions and so forth. Even from then onward, all of that, anything that can help others is considered engaged bodhicitta. That's it.
Ini ta tingsan ko pena ngaran je kangere tendegi na pena ta longba de so pena ta ngara to Nepal de so longba dawena ini mi mangbo ge ta karse nima re ge lega le de ta ki chowa ke dinge de mangbo ta khala sajumene ti pet ke sere ta ini kale cha do ko yore. Tene teta we pene da tingsan ngana to zambulengi tene mambo chachi ngana to yang mi ta tene ke chi jimba tang ya da tene ta pene ngana to so ne tene mambo che do tene ngana to gomba to chi tes ko to pe sha tene du che tene so so ko ta chi yanda mena ya chi so so ko ta longba to so na ya tes pen chi do che do te na ge ta mi chu bo tene mambo ko tene che do ta te so pe ene ka che bo do. Ini ngazu jimba sengen teso tapen ini tari tendraoge ini nanglayang hechimoshira redo. Ini tenagi tata nupcho teso la jikta kashi nukong kanshi. Bene jikta sosogo yang je tsungrawada ta tendrege jikera chido inana ta timshi paremado kita mangchiwa jikta tata jik tingsan pena ne teso tola ya ta jik men zoya dang. Tendega kub zoya dang, tendega tola pen bezo mambo chegadoa, tesu tola roson mambo tangdoa. Ta tesu tamji pena, yani jawa te lamun chongyang dra, majong na yang dra la, kozu gu kunhong tesu, ha leba pen de kesari yagorewa, jesu yarang tuki che shogore. Pena ta mi mambo tesu pet kesari nga su lonyen chongyen daro dang chukbo te mambo roson peme tangdoa, tesu tola ta pen men zoya tendega tola. Ini tendegi tola cek tapsi kare yebe tola. Ota teso tangi pena ngaranzo ini jiso irangu yare do pena ngaranzo ta ini jimba singe ta tenagi pena ini ta tsucham singe yora tsucham singe deso ta cik ngazu sosu ge choje ini rang ta mgewa deso pa domyare choje ini yenla ya ta ini ta ya Pemba Drobia getting also Chag Yorwa. And this is the Tatena ye pen and the sort of ye heard the Chimbato sing at the Zoya, Rang Nima Chegi, Yago, some of Tangina, Nima Chegi licking on a part of the Chimbato sing at the so. Pejo Tam Topaji Midoa.
And so, we're in like, for example, here in Nepal, there are a lot of people who are out working and don't even have anything to eat. And so there are many people and many of us who are getting together money and offering them food and gathering money, even within the monastery, people gathering money, and then wealthy people from the community, working to kind of feed their community and to help the situation in that way. And I think that's really important for us to also, to focus our efforts in on kind of engaged activities such as, acts of generosity and so forth that we can do. And as well in the West, then, there are lots of people who are doing all kinds of work in order to try to, alleviate the situation, people who are trying to develop medicines and vaccines and so forth. And I think it's really important for us to rejoice in their good works, to rejoice in their efforts and thank those people for all the hard work that they're doing. And then, secondly, when we start talking about the 6 perfections, we can talk about the perfection of discipline. And within that perfection of discipline, from one side, that means to restrict yourself from any kind of the 10 non-virtuous activities and so forth. But from the other side, it means to actually engage in the discipline of helping others. And so if we really think about it carefully, then there's nothing about the 6 perfections that we can't actually engage in our day-to-day activities. Listen.
Oh, Zoba Yaman does a tap me say that some Mongo huge Zogo, that is what me say, catching Boshuredoa. Touching around to the Chochin, Kangan Zogo, the Chochin, and Lord of Zogo. The nature Chini Tang around Zogotena Yeta, Sozogupenda, Tiga Cup the Dungeon, Sozogotaya, Yamland, there is a church in a young cover to the jet tobna. That Tariga cock up the so young.
And similarly with our practice of patience and forbearance, we have a particularly good opportunity to practice that right now in terms of patiently forbearing our current situation and the difficulties and sufferings that go along with that. And another side of that is that, taking up this particular situation or in accordance with the current context and the kind of world that we find ourselves in right now, we can also, it's a really good opportunity for us to practice the patience or forbearance of actually doing our practice in an austere manner or in a kind of more serious manner. Listen.
Something senata so sem shiva zoetria. Sem shiva zoet. That thing sang halam me kechi shureta. Yena ngato things me mendoa. Da jaka guzo to mendo. Ene ta pecha tang zoya mendo chuko zoya mendo. Ene ta kaya mendo atete. Ta soso rangechi ngato semna ya. Ta 나차 생긴 나차 때서 답변은 동할 강에 다 동할 다 다르게 채워지 연구요 말에 띄나요 답들을 폐하 매게다 싫다 제하면도 대대 당가는 저거지 애니 셈바 다 지가 좀아 애니 마초야 지고용야 대화용야 흘러용야 당가서 그좀 얘네 삼대 생겨서 개체버려도 미세기 신이 생활과 셈 희월니 비탑 Any penangaran zogma, any sem matropa, pena condola sopa meva reva. Any tachi sem, any tapena, any tating sanga huge, tachiamido, kangas, somba in and carry in the chichiamido. Then that sem getting arazoma, any zo denita, chagua maybe sem, tuba maybe sem. Then it did get tachi arazo mamumbi sem, the rich taco. 강에 존나 에네페네 찍고 존나 소 장심지 샘슨 가리지네 샘 딱딱 대통에 찍고 존소나 양 고소마 베드께서 처음에 봤더니 야 마용봐 에네 야보제 토야 야 두자 조선나 야 베드께서 처음 봤더니 많이 막 가래 이나야 코르토바 조토바 지야 되나 얘는 아주 샘미데 개체모도 근데 미세기 다다 ngaran 저기 다다 되니 다 지난 이가게 누가 대신이 기소 탑돼서 담지 지발라도 나발라도 근데 미세기 상가 타와 요사래 근데 맞도 드니그마 조고드니 샘 시월니 비게 탑돼서 땡제 다때 개체모도 등산다 리서치하게 루시와치하게 맞도 리서치하게 다 감가서 그 고접사래 요 말했어 여러분 다 나도 지게어와 제르스민 포르케사 다운테네 다 계산을 주지도 요 말았어 다 돼서 년가 차고래 대때 다 샘시버니 근데 소소 랑글 병제 샘시버니야 근데 니스다 가나서 디 고급대 요레스.
And then when we talk about the perfection of meditative concentration, mainly what we're talking about there is the practice of shamatha, or calm abiding practice. And this is our most important medicine for right now, because we don't have any other medicine right now. The countries can't make us a medicine. We can't buy any medicine. The rich people haven't been able to make us any medicine. And so that's what we've got. And so this is the medicine for our minds. And so there's nothing else that we can really do at this point, and we should prevent ourselves from gaining any extra illness that we could get in terms of mental difficulties. And so what we're working with there with calm abiding then is to not allow our minds to be disturbed, to allow our minds to be, to feel pleasant and relaxed. And, the particular quality of that is to make your mind rest in a peaceful way, or abide in a undisturbed way, which is not mixed up, or which is undisturbed by anger, by attachment and desire, by ignorance, and so forth. And so, that we're not carried away by those, whether we experience happiness or suffering, that we don't have like this unreasonable or uncontrolled or limitless kind of like over the top kind of happiness. And that if we fall into suffering, we don't fall into some kind of unbearable suffering. And if we fall into, desire, that, that we're not going to fall into some kind of over the top desire that causes us to break our, our kind of disciplines and commitments and so forth. And so that's why this, calm abiding, this perfection, or the paramita of meditative concentration, is so important. And so this is a practice which is common both to Buddhists and non-Buddhists, and I suppose that it still exists within non-Buddhist schools, but it's a common practice of Buddhists and non-Buddhists. And right now, that's what we can do, is develop that, because we can't really go to the gym right now to exercise our bodies. Those places are very dangerous. We go there to exercise or to a public swimming pool or whatever, and most of those places are closed and they're quite dangerous. And so what we can do then is actually, practice or exercise our minds into this practice of calm abiding, and exercise our bodies alone at home. And we have a really good opportunity to do that right now. Listen.
Lasso, teni sonda, ene ta ngaran zogu mengi chote, ta zo ene tere doata jangkyobji sem singen ta ngoni ki ngazo ene mengi chote redo. Teni ta misegi jangkyobji sem bom. Teni tena yinga pena tani ngaran zogu shine teso nyamne che. Teni yang samla. 아직 ngazo마 뽕에 대해서 냠내지 근데스 제바이나 비트니 ngaran즈 다리기 뜨겁대서라다 nga도지 이니 문이기 무발라고 돼서 다 파체돼서 제 토바 무바 돼서 레도 상도스.
And so the supreme medicine is bodhicitta. And so I think that if we can focus a particular attention onto this development of bodhicitta, and then together with that, practice some calm abiding, and then sometimes practice some tonglen, some giving and taking meditation, that these are things which in our present situation are necessary, and which are helpful, and which we are capable of doing, and which are necessary in our present situation. Listen.
다 때나 예테니 ngaranzo 조 애니 다 바로도 침바 조그나니 Then 다 시럽 생에 데려와서 시럽지 바로도 침바 생인데 다 때려 지가 또 당한 또 그지 아니 교성 범성 같으니 어 냠내제 요르바스.
And then, similarly, continuing on with the six perfections, the sixth of those then is the perfection of wisdom. And so in that, then we're often primarily talking about the practices of the wisdom of hearing the teachings, the practice of contemplating the teachings, and the practice of meditating on the teachings, or the wisdom of meditating on the teachings.
근데 다 다리 빼는 다 퇴바제스도 다 퇴바제스는 나랑도 다 등상게 되는 양 고급돼서 야구 여바 성장 되는 아주 뎁든데 양 대서로 그러와 다 아주 양 추서 고샤 잡지는 빼는다 내 쇼가야 라는 거다 두스킨도 때 몸때 야 되는 양 뎁대스로 다들이라고 진 빼나 된다고 다진 아주 팬 토야 같은 사람들의 대망고 인제 돌아야 주로도 미세기다 얘네 견주도보다 로종도서 팬 토시라요 사례 때나 인가 빼나 얘네 양아라 좀 대입돼서 대스로 대 마음마다바지 마음 자손에 한 삼탄다니 여기야 양 삼산은 마음 잡았더니 맞이지 또 이제 되네 대 당아서 퇴바지야 탑지레스.
And so when we're talking about the wisdom of hearing, then for hearing, then we've got a really great opportunity for that right now. So we should read some books. And so, like I was saying before, we should divide up our time or schedule our time. So we get up in the morning, we do some practice, then we read some books. There's so many good books and helpful books that are translated into English these days. So you should read The Way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharyavatara, or some other mind training texts or so forth. I think those are going to be really helpful right now. But don't read too much. At a certain point, sometimes people read too much and then they just want to throw it aside. So don't go too far. But we have a great opportunity right now to hear and study these teachings.
That's all that I'm going to take this all a day. I'm to this thing at Jorva. Jegum than Jugum sing it today. Ta donut today, sitting it at Jegum chair today. That's all that that's some be shirp singing, so that's all that Jegum chair today. Then I ran to chick flat hunk. Any Tanyam singing to the Mancha that I'm going to chick. That the that. Shirab jitachi yang around so misegita and some beginning.
And so then we need to contemplate those teachings. And so if we're reading a book, and then we, after we're reading the book, we often talk about this process of analytic meditation versus placing or resting meditation. And so when we're thinking about those teachings, we could consider that, or primarily what we consider that is an analytic meditation. It's an analysis. And so a lot of the Vipassana teachings are these practices of the wisdom of Vipassana are practices of analysis or analytic meditation, which can be considered actually a part of the contemplation process.
Any day na yin ta yin den the so to no ma tene object na ma bu che ba ta te so tam chi any ta ta ri te su go me ke ko ka bra go yore te ko bra go yore te so la tene te su tene nyam le che tene te su ma gonja.
And so many of you have received teachings on the resting in the nature of mind, the Simnying Yelso, and the treasure of precious qualities. And so now we have the opportunity to actually meditate on those things that we learned. So we should take that opportunity to put this into practice.
Oh yeah, data tada tini ma any kazang tini halam nga to keja je chongso jik kena tini Kembo tene ta namja dorje dene tena yeta jikona bata nga to yang seminga so to jikma koranzo misege ta nyamne jenge ta ba jik ta so tebne lo yoro ba tene nga zo ngo chok chajo deso Then Tiwandra Yana, then Yana Katik Nangoyana, Karachik on a Koran to this Chargi Yamnet and Yabo dos, singing Katapa Shui, then Koran Bayati, then a Pacha Tachino, you get down search. Yes. Kanda tools check it at the Kambon Gele, Kambon Jador, in it, then I get that in a Cheranzo Yam, tools Chena Yabo dos.
Consul to Yatayade.
Oh, yeah, Coranzo, Tinichik, that's also Katan, Coranzo, the chicken, Pa, you get a dance and lie, Tinichik, Chicken Yamla taste Koto, Tata Traja, Jena and Ratini, Yana Chikoto, Tap and the Yankee Tiwatling, so the in and Tachi, Kata, so you can go to Tony Agudo at home. Tatalong, so Chitan, Tiki Chargy Mango, that Chargy can never draw it.
No.
Talo de Meba Majeva Jeta, the so good chick. Yang Tapi Yanda Tony, that is a Lobra Tamji Kanga Tiki Tony Soguyore, Lihonga Lega, Ajik Tony Chegore, Yang Matsoya, Tindrik Tony Matoga, Taki to Pejo Tankim. That can what Chenamiga, get that into the chick, so that is Chego, and Yakodo, that did over Jenny. Tinitinita Cambonamja, Dorje, that phone number, that Cambon Galera, that Chena number, the Zotin days, 2 sitting. Katik the so for the trajectory of part now, the Zutuni answer to our talent and those shit in it, they are well.
That's it. And so also then for the students, who were specifically already started into the study of and the receiving the teachings of the Simning also, the resting of nature of mind, we already started those teachings, and this year, everything was canceled, all of our program. We had a very big program this year to continue in that direction, and everything was shut down. And so just like, this year, all the schools are running online, all the offices are running online. And so we talked about how for Kempo Namchak Dorji and Kempo Ngawan Gelek Rinpoche, that we could try and continue so that the program wasn't, completely cut off, but so that there was some kind of continuity to that, that they could set up something to give some continued teachings on that program, and that you all would have the opportunity to send some questions and so forth, and to set something up for that. So that's also something that's being discussed. Listen.
Hola, so tenita pene ini gombishiro rawata ngazo mangochi. Tenita ngoma ani shakchenda, zokchenda. Ta ngazo nyamne mangoche. Tenita nagi pene mango shutsarwata. Teso shutsajo tendi yojo teso ta tari teni cheranzo. Ta nyamne cheag pe ta tari yang ta petke se tula madan ta chi lega yeda mindoa de chedu kapso. 다 냠네 지야 되더니 인지 메뉴 지난 쪽들이 냠네데 제로나스 조chen 공고요나 아니 때나게 차chen 공고요나 아니 미세게 당아서 특교 터가를 에다 돼서 요조 돼서 다 다리더니 냠네데 다리 쇼겨고래 고급대 담진 지효스.
And so then when we talk of the wisdom of meditation, then so many of you have received teachings on the Great Perfection, on Mahamudra, and you've received many teachings on those things. And so now it's really important to put them into practice and to not allow this time to go to waste, because most of it, we don't have anything else to do. We don't have other work right now. And so in that time, it's really a time that we should be putting them into practice. And so if you're practicing Dzogchen, you should practice Dzogchen. If you're practicing Mahamudra, for those of you who have particularly received the instructions on Trek and Tugel, then you absolutely have to take this opportunity.
다 톱톱 되는 냠네 맞이는 팬토 말이 기술 말하게 시 고야가 뭐해 얘네 사고 그래 송래봐 추 투야가 팬토 말에 되니 추 티비 팬토 말에 얘네 냠슬랭 거래 곰고래 마도 되니 메트로고 도저그 얘네 칼라 깨작 랍데어 찍바 차그래 했더니 얘네.
And so then just receiving teachings and continuing to receive teachings and not putting it into practice isn't helpful. So just like Milarepa said, just hearing about food isn't going to fill your belly. You need to eat it. And so just hearing those teachings isn't going to help. You need to put them into practice. So just like hearing about food's not going to help a hungry person, just receiving teachings and not putting them into practice isn't going to be helpful.
Voilà, so tenita ini counter yang teni ngata ini train that so that teni tate shego tatini ngita da de senji kotela ta counter yang ta ngata so that so that ini lam ta 바로도 침바 돌도 저 냠내가 와도 되나 teni koto ini laba som se ta so that telen durodo wa ta cham tene tingin zin shirab somla. Tene ta kaundar tene nga zo jimba tsutam zoba teso tsutam nana durodo. Ene ta tena yin ta samden sengen teso tene ta nga zo ta shini da tingin zin ma gondro re. Tene ta shirab de ta nga zo shiyaba nagi ta dona ini tiang nga tsu ta dong ya tsu yang ni yang dubduna ini tab da shirab ni said oni tang ini ningye la pache ta pache tikba chimba sama dugu ye bizo na bare tama te ini tong ningye la pache dudu re tapshi ni la.
That's it. And so then this path of the 6 perfections can all be contained within the 3 higher trainings. And so we have the trainings in discipline, meditative concentration or samadhi, and wisdom. And so the first 3, the perfections of giving, of discipline, and of patience are all contained within that practice of discipline. And then the practice of meditation or of meditative concentration is contained within the training on samadhi. And then the wisdom is contained within wisdom. And then the enthusiasm or the 6th of the 6 perfections then goes into all 3 of the trainings. It is contained within all 3 of those higher trainings. And we can further contain that even more down into method and wisdom, or what we would call wisdom and compassion. So if we contain all of the practices of this bodhisattva path down, we can discuss them, or they are all contained within method and wisdom.
다티 탐지가 존주되다 탐지가 좋아res 공 송귀이나 양다 공 이기이나 양다 다 탑의 힘을 이기이나 양다 근데 나바 송귀이나 양다 다 탐지 존주되 탐지가 좋아도 왔어.
And so that perfection of diligence, that goes along with all of these, no matter how we talk about the list, whether we talk about it as a list of 2 things or a list of the 3 trainings or the 6 perfections. That practice of enthusiasm, of diligence, that goes along with every one of those aspects.
그래서 다양한 속에 대탐지 니마 찍을마 두기인스.
나.
다 대탐지 가서 다치 냠네 가리고 그래 니마 찍을 거서마다 강다더니 냠네 가리시고 그래 니마 찍을마 두기인스.
And so I'm going to bring that all down into 다잉이양 야포 고츠마솔라.
다 냠네에서 탐지 참아다 니마 찍을 가리시고 그래. 다 참아 니마 찍을마. 참아다 니마 가리시고 그래.
Okay. So now I'm going to say, that's what I want, or I'm going to say then, like what it means to contain all of that into one day's practice.
그래서 다 ngaranz 쇼가야 랑네 드니 ngaranz 당고텔라 얘네 심제하고 지근홍대 다 답게 당게 드랭에 얘네 다지 먹게와 마임바 게와 길리 카테 투톱 얘네 지 드고이 냠네 제거이 투섬 제거이 삼제제는 쇼가 심제대제.
And so in the morning when you wake up, you think you develop bodhicitta, you examine your motivation, and you think, I'm not going to practice non-virtuous things, but I'm going to engage in virtue as much as possible. I'm going to engage in these virtues. I'm going to hear and contemplate the teachings and so forth.
얘네 나랑 셈나 차게지즈 당에 트레 쇼가 되지 니 용 되지 공다 되지 제 상황 다지 가서 배는 범죄야 그때서 되네 답배도 주세요. 아니 양다게 다지 가서 냠야지도 가래이나 되게 차게지서 그냥 때때 생활한 게 도스견에 되네. 야 삼노고마 때다 전시기 토니 때다가 거좀 맞이어지 때 개침보여래. 가서 등상 찬양보지야 개침보 휴도와 찬양보지야 돼.
And so then we think of a plan for our day, and so we should think about our day, and think about how we're going to use our time, what time we're going to meditate, and then what we're going to do when we're not meditating, and get a bit of an idea of what we're going to do with our day in the morning, in the afternoon, and then in the evening. And it's important that we have some real reflection and some real mindfulness about how we do this. It's really important for us to have a kind of an equal attitude about how we approach our day.
That's it. Train arang kare redo kik taiche. Oh, tene ta yago si chong dona, tene train gewate so. Simply tam chiki chedo pa ngoache. Nonam yago ojo.
And so when I was saying you should be equal about that, what I mean is you shouldn't spend all your time in one aspect, or else you'll get kind of tired or bored of that. And so you should really kind of have some equanimity about, how you use your time, that you don't just, for example, force yourself to meditate all day or something like that. And so then in the evening, you should examine what you did in the day and how it worked out for you, or what you were able to accomplish, and look back at your day. And then think over all the virtues that you did that day and dedicate those for the benefit of all beings. Listen.
Dayang yago chongmindo na dayang tegi nyamnyung tale. Oh, terenge yago je chongmindo sta terenge yang chukpa yang pe jesere ta tukya zo pe ngano rori chongdo na. Ya ti yang nyamnyung tale. Oh ta terenga tene remindo. And then
if things didn't go well for you, if you didn't do well that day, then you need to gain experience from that. You need to learn from that. And so you need to recognize what you didn't do well, that you were arguing or fighting with people, or that you made certain mistakes or whatever. And you need to gain some experience from that, and you need to learn from that, and think that you're not going to repeat that in the future, that you're not going to repeat that again tomorrow. That's it.
Ta tene ta tos chene tene rang ya. Ene ta chu sing de tonda dodo su tene je sego yore. Tene chu sego do chu. Kare se ngara zo gu ju de so zang do tang ya. Ene ya do tang ya zo ju tang ya de nima che gu zo ju tang to mare. Ene hatta che gu zo ju tang to mare. Kale tos chentene ngazo kale koso ani ngazo jor matho pachi yo mare tene tres chechina ngazo jor tukore ani tres che ngara rang yi chiche rawa tene ngara zo ani ngomaya ani ten nagi jeneta ani ngara sanyi jangyo sumbat sotamje ten nagi chi cheni tere che changcho tobare san jebarawa ten nagi tene ngagi chang 제 마타비 좀생 강해요. 다스 나 두고 말해 성어 줘라 디스 매버지. 나게 제 마타비 강해요 봐. 야 디감이 가서 찍과 제고다. 거저이 가서 찍과라 거저 제도는 나양 가르 제 마타비 강해요. 삼진 성쇼 마차버지. 어다 도스 제들 문튼 배저 제바이나. 내가 가라서 추바 랍드소이나. 얘네 지 니마레레 야르지든 로그레 송요래. Drink the so in a dawachi, Dawatrinoya, things yada yaji drogores. Tama the so in a low chili yaji drogores, on the oh, those two students, Tamasope, any jute so chezan, samba chezan, joba chezan, any ta, Tatogo penetrates and out to John de Genyon, yon dente, any Chemang and Rone, Tama John Tam just say. Then tam ching on the chona, then a dead thing around so any Sanji compensing that there domato, yen, then Sanji salad, Joe, compact your Joe Middle day, another match at any number to George Chor about things I had, then tell me, or that those now which it's some get any, then I get in our.
And so then we should think about what's the meaning. Please. What's the meaning of the word that we use for dharma? And so that word literally means like to transform something or to cure something, to fix something. And so what that means then is to make our mind, to transform our mind, to become more wholesome, to become more whole. And so it's not something that we can do in just one day. We can't fix our mind or transform our mind in one day. We can't do that in 1 week. But we can do it slowly. We can transform our mind. So it's not the case that our mind is unfixable or unchangeable. It is something that we can transform, and we need to have trust. We need to trust ourselves that we can do it. And so in the past, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they attained that state. They attained their attainments of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in that same way. And so if we think about, if they were able to do it, then there's no reason why I can't do it. And so we need to have a belief and a trust in that there's no reason why we wouldn't also be able to do it. And so we should never be discouraged about that. And if we don't have any discouragement, and if we trust ourselves and we continue to practice with diligence, then the best of us, the most capable of us, it's said that they will show improvement even on a day-to-day basis. They will show improvement. And the middling or the middle capacity of us will show improvement month to month. And even the weakest or the most foundational, the most basic of capacities of beings will show some improvement from year to year. And so in that way, we can transform our mind to make it more and more wholesome. Our faults will become lesser and lesser. Our qualities will become greater and greater. And ultimately, eventually, we will absolutely eliminate all of our faults and make all of these qualities of Buddhahood fully manifest. And that's the point when we attain Buddhahood. And otherwise, there isn't some place of Buddhahood that we can just walk to or go to. Otherwise, we could just book a plane ticket and we would have already gone there. But that's not the case. And so it's in that way that we continue to make this progress. Lasso.
Teneta Paja to Zorno Yabana Marve.
No.
Oh, Lasso. Tenetagares, Tene.
Okay.
Lasso, Tenetagare, Tene, Tanga, Cheran, Yam de Yo, Tenga Tarmoina, Yam de Yore, Tene. Oh, Teneta Sani, young Aran to train it so Rawalian, any young Kiki Sayo, Teningato, Tene, Toyo, Teningato, Samike, Tene, that Tomi Yarona, Tene Tamating around to the Yamna Cheggy.
And so, even though I'm far away, I'm still here with you all. And also tomorrow, for those of you who are joining in, for those of you who are in the programs from past years, then we're also meeting again tomorrow at the same time. So please keep all of this advice I've given today in mind, and let's do a dedication and aspiration prayer. Let's.
Lasso, Changcho Simjo Rumbo, Jema, Jebanam, Peva, show, Jignation, Lola, London, Persian, Chopper, Tele, Tamjin, and Yeland, Bakundro, Dombanjik, comes a Shamba, Temba, New, then the bone of Shiruki, Temba, Urine, be trashy, show. All us was the Tala tragic tola young can. In it up and it is a death jig in it Samala, any that or trash delays, and it's Samala, any to them compare. And it up at Sama get to them. Chipoch in a euro now.
And so everyone who's here with us online, Tashi Dele to all of you. I wish you all success and increase in your practice and realization, and please all be happy.
Oh, Teneta Sami Yabo Kona, Yabab Kodola.
Gogudola.
Yeah, Lasso. We need to the chair.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. Good night.